on our stream. If you want to introduce yourself and say hi to our viewers.
I'm Dr. Honeyhurst.
Okay. I could not hear you, but I'm hoping the audience can. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull down my microphone when you're talking. That might help. So our interview today, you actually have, I spoke with you earlier today, you actually have a very personal connection to Stephen Hawking. And I'm being told still that we're having some audio issues with you. So if I ask you to repeat yourself, I'm sorry, but we'll try to get through it, okay?
Okay. Moving over because it looks like I'm cut off on the side too. Oh, there we go.
Tanya, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And I'm hearing you in my earpiece. So I was talking to you earlier today in an interview, and I learned that you have a very unique connection to Stephen Hawking. So if you wouldn't mind, can you kind of elaborate on that for me, please?
Yeah. Do you mean about the illness part?
Yes.
Okay. So when I was in junior high, my grandfather gave me a copy of Stephen Hawking's book, A Brief History of Time, and it really got me interested in astrophysics and cosmology and really wanting to understand the universe after I had already been interested in space, but this just really solidified it. And it was around the same time that I was starting to get sick, and it took a few years before they diagnosed me with a condition called ankylosing spondylitis, which very quickly started to affect my mobility. So I had a lot of problems with standing and walking. I was in and out of wheelchairs and using walkers and other assistive devices, braces. And it was really demoralizing at the time because when you're 13, 14 years old and suddenly you're losing the ability to do all the things that you used to be able to do, you start to wonder what you're going to do with your life. And seeing Stephen Hawking be able to still write books and travel the world and teach classes was really inspirational because it helped me feel like if he could do all those things, I could still do those things. I could still get up and get in my wheelchair and go to my physics class, and I didn't have any excuse or reason to complain because I was still much more mobile than he was. So I didn't have any right to complain in my own mind.
So he passed away. We got the news yesterday, but it was actually already today, 3/14 Pi Day, where he was, because was he I know he was overseas. Was it England?
Yes.
So when you heard the news, what was your initial reaction?
I happened to be up when the news came out, so I saw it about 5 minutes after it broke on the BBC, and it felt like being punched in the gut. I don't think I've ever had such an emotional reaction to the death of a person that I've never even met before. And I legitimately stayed up for a while just crying, thinking about it. It was not like it was unexpected. He was not young and he was quite ill, but he was one of those figures that's been just so omnipresent in science that you just kind of expected he would be around forever, you know?
So we were talking earlier about like his legacy and his life. What do you think people will remember him most for?
I think he'll be remembered most. It depends if you're talking about the science community versus the general public. I think the general public will remember him for his ability to communicate science to them. And maybe, like you mentioned earlier, his appearances on things like The Simpsons. And I remember him from his appearance on Star Trek since I'm a huge Trek fan. I think in science, he'll be remembered mostly for his contributions to the study of black holes and his discovery completely accidentally of what is now dubbed Hawking radiation, which is stuff that's emitted from black holes that he himself didn't expect to find, and he thought it shouldn't exist. So when he made this mathematical discovery, he was, I believe his own quote was, "I was quite annoyed with myself for stumbling upon this because it was not what he expected to find at all."
So we always hear about, because I've watched PBS all the time, I'll admit it, and we hear things about like Tesla and other scientists that we lose, and we look back and we're like, well, we probably didn't appreciate them when they were here. Do you think with Stephen Hawking this is another instance?
I don't think so because he has been so respected in the scientific community for his contributions. So I think that he was lucky that he was appreciated while he was here, and maybe we'll go back and discover things that he didn't even realize he'd stumbled upon, kind of like what happened with Einstein. So who knows, maybe 20, 50, 100 years from now, he'll still be making contributions to science that he didn't even know he'd made.
So you've been talking about this all day, and as we wrap up here, is there anything else that you want to tell our viewers about Mr. Hawking, or how to remember him, or what's next in the world of science? Anything?
Well, I like to say, don't stare down at your feet, look up at the stars. And I think that he would want everybody to just keep exploring the universe and never stop questioning, never stop exploring. Don't lose your curiosity for the universe.
Well, thank you so much for your time for the second time today. Really appreciate it. And take care of yourself.
Thanks for having me.